It's time once again to do an episode based around an anime that lots of my subscribers have been asking I do a full episode around for ages. This time, Attack on Titan. And I'm giving the video maybe the dumbest title on the channel since Biomech Benny Sharp escapes from the Infinite IKEA, A Bat on Titan. Because I'm taking the worlds of Batman and Attack on Titan and mashing them together. The title doesn't really make sense, but I promise the story mostly will. Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. Bruce Wayne and his adopted brother Jason could have lived a luxurious, peaceful life in the Wayne's ancestral home in the middle ring of walls that made up Gothis Island. So far as Bruce had known, Gothis was the only place on Earth with surviving human civilization, as the massive set of walls around their lands were one of the few things keeping humanity safe from the Titans. These were monstrous humanoid giants that craved human flesh and nothing more. Bruce's ancestors had helped fund the building of the walls that now protected everyone from the beasts, but it's unclear if they knew how tiered their society would become from the extra protection provided to those in the inner rings. The outer cities, only protected by the thinnest, least reliable walls, were always at risk of a Titan breaking through. Anyone who gained even the slightest amount of wealth would instantly move out of these regions, even if that meant stealing that wealth from someone else. Those in the inner walls often referred to these outer regions as the crime district, and would stay far away at all costs, even trying to shame the Waynes for venturing frequently to them to try and help those in need. Bruce's parents always ignored the judgment and continued their work, until the day they disappeared. All that was found of them in the last crime district they'd visited was the shattered remains of Mrs. Wayne's pearl necklace, strewn about in a puddle of blood. So, the worst had been assumed by authorities, but Jason and Bruce never accepted this and frequently ventured to the crime districts to investigate. Or just to fight crime to sate their rage. One day, when Bruce was 20 and Jason was 14, they saw a crime in action and began chasing down the perp. The chase went on for a while, and soon enough, Jason fell behind, but Bruce kept on. They'd chased the crook to the edge of the wall when Jason had fallen behind, then had doubled back towards the inner city. Bruce ran and ran, furiously needing to catch the criminal. But soon, his focus faltered as the entire city got a collective chill when a green bolt of lightning struck the top of the outside wall and was soon followed by a blood-curdling laugh that could be heard for miles. Bruce looked to the top of the wall, as all citizens did, and they all stared in horror at a cackling, green-haired Titan sitting atop the wall. Before anyone could process what was happening, there was an explosive collision at the base of the wall that sent rocks flying throughout the city. An extremely muscular Titan with green tubes along its body and a face like a luchador mask exploded through the base of the wall and stormed into the crime district, soon followed by a wave of Titans. The cackling Titan leapt from the wall, right to where Bruce had last seen Jason in the chase. Bruce doubled back and ran faster and faster. Soon overhead, members of the military police were soaring around in their omnidirectional gear, specialized mobility devices that strapped to the wearer like a harness and could fire grapple hooks to propel them around the Titans and give them a chance at slicing open the Titan's weak point, the back of their necks. The Titan who laughed was chuckling along as he kicked over buildings and plucked people from the ground to devour them. A few of the military police got close, but the Titan was so fast it grabbed them before they could even attempt a strike. The Titan batted one out of the air who slammed to the ground right next to Bruce. They didn't survive the impact. Instinctively, Bruce tore off their ODM gear and started putting it on himself. He'd only used it a few times in school, but he'd been a natural with it. But to his horror, as he almost had it on, he saw the cackling Titan raising a new person off the ground. A boy who punched and bit at the Titan's hand, fighting for freedom the whole way to the monstrosity's mouth, was Jason. Bruce screamed at the Titan to put him down, but it was useless. The thing just juggled Jason in its hand, seeming to enjoy Jason's struggle. It then grabbed him by the leg and hurled him into the air. Jason fell towards its maw as Bruce finally got on the gear, pressed the button to shoot a grapple, and nothing happened. It had broken in the fall. So Bruce could do nothing but watch as Jason tumbled straight down into the laughing Titan's throat. The rest of that day had been a blur to Bruce. He'd helped who he could escape, and about 90% of citizens had gotten to the next wall, while the military police warded off as many Titans as they could. But within weeks, hundreds were inside the first layer of walls. Bruce eventually returned home, devastated by another familial loss, and what's worse, having to tell his caretaker, Alfred, what had happened to Jason. The two mourned together briefly, but Bruce wasn't one to be inactive for long. He pushed the feelings down and got to fixing the ODM gear he'd taken. Not just fixing, but improving. He could have tried joining the military police to fight Titans, but he had no interest in following orders. He wanted to go take on Titans wherever they were and whenever he felt it was right. Over the next 4 years, more and more Titans breached the outer walls and slowly made their way towards the next ring. Bruce became somewhat of a folk legend, bursting onto the scene of Titan attacks, taking down dozens while the military police struggled with a few. But as many as he killed, he could never find the one he truly wanted. The Titan who laughed. He'd heard rumors from the members of the military police who would actually talk to him, despite his activity technically being illegal, that there were many other unusual Titans being spotted who seemed to act like leaders to the others. There was one that was short and rotund and somewhat resembled a penguin, one that could allegedly control plant life, even one with a red armored head that seemed to fight other Titans. But the one that caught Bruce's ear most was when he was told of a pale white and red Titan who laughed in a similar way to the one that had killed Jason. Perhaps they were connected. And so that one became Bruce's next target, and almost his last. When he came upon that Titan, it was destroying a city only a few hundred meters from the first inner wall. Bruce heard its cackle as it smashed through buildings, killing dozens, if not hundreds, on its own. He nearly went into a blind rage as he attacked. He got within a few feet of its neck when it ducked down, thrust out a hand, and in a puff of steam spawned a massive, jagged warhammer that it swirled around and smashed him out of the air with. As he shot towards the ground, his bones felt like sand. Blood trailed through the air behind him. In one blow, his life would have been completely snuffed out, if it hadn't been for what happened next. Just as his body struck the ground, all his pain vanished. Steam billowed over his eyes, and when it cleared, he was standing upright. Not just standing, but towering. He was taller than the buildings around him. His body had shifted into that of a Titan. He didn't know what was going on or how this was possible, but he did know that he had a new, overwhelming feeling of power and rage. The hammer-wielding Titan was still laughing as she sprinted away from the scene. He wanted to chase her down, but there were still dozens of regular Titans terrorizing the city. Bruce couldn't ignore the terrified screams of civilians. He began tearing through the other Titans, pummeling them with his fists, slicing through them with the blades that protruded from his forearms. They fought back, but none were even close to a match for Bruce. By the time he ripped through the final one, the whole city was watching. He let out a final victory cry before his body shrunk in on itself in another burst of steam, turning him back to his regular form, now fully healed from his previous injuries. As the cloud slowly cleared, he could see that the military police were surrounding him. Bruce was taken in by the military police and questioned, but he had very few answers for them, and nobody knew what to make of this revelation. Humans could become Titans. How was it possible, and who could do it? It soon led them to asking, were there more Titans among them? Perhaps that was how the Titans were coordinating their attacks, learning where the military police were stationing people so that Titans could strike on the least guarded cities. Maybe they had someone working on the inside. Of the group Bruce was brought in by, the one that he'd worked alongside most over the years, many of them had their own theories about the situation. Their squad leader, Jim Gordon, thought this was certainly confirmation that the Titans were more organized than people had previously believed. Private Quinn, who'd attempted to study Titan psychology before joining the military, thought the Titans could have different factions, all with different aims. The burly Colonel Rodriguez thought regardless of what Bruce had shown, he wasn't worth trusting if he could turn into a Titan wherever and whenever. But the others overruled him, and soon that was indeed proven to be the truth. So long as Bruce was in the presence of people in peril, he could turn once more into his Titan form by harming himself in some way, often choosing to put a small cut into his hand. With Bruce's help, this group managed to take on dozens of clusters of Titans and significantly hinder their pushes towards the inner walls. But it still felt like something bigger was working against them. While they were making their strategic plays against large groups of Titans, multiple packs would then make well-timed hits against other cities, far enough away from Bruce that he'd never be able to make it to them in time. On top of that, they were never able to get to the location of the Laughing Titan. Anytime they found out about it making one of its very rare appearances, it was gone by the time they arrived, as if it knew they were coming. Something was wrong, and only Bruce was able to figure it out. Private Quinn had always been a loose cannon on missions, breaking formation to go off on her own, making it hard to account for her whereabouts when certain Titans showed up on the scene. But he eventually put together, with Gordon's help, that she had never been seen in the same place at the same time as the female Titan. When the two tried to lure her into an underground meeting where they could question her without risking her turning, she caught on to their ploy and proved their theory right. Just inside the inner wall, Private Quinn bit into her arm before being lured underground and transformed into the laughing female Titan. Soon after, Bruce followed suit, changing forms. Nobody in the inner walls had seen a Titan in decades, so this wealthy city went into unbridled panic as the two Titans brawled in the city square. Quinn spawned her massive hammer again, and with a single swipe destroyed a whole city block, but missed agile Bruce. The plan had been kept secret from the other members of the military police in case there were more traitors in their midst, but the rest of Gordon's squad were quickly made aware of the breach and were on the scene. The only instruction Gordon gave them was to keep Quinn alive. They needed to apprehend her in her human form to question her about anything she knew of the Titans. With the combination of the military slashing away at Quinn's limbs and Bruce dealing massive blows in his Titan form, Quinn was eventually worn down. Her body was steaming more and more, signaling that she was close to turning back. Finally, Bruce tackled her into a building, and the rest of the squad fired a barrage of wires to tie her down, hoping she'd soon have to turn. They all just waited. More and more steam billowed off her as she struggled hopelessly to escape. She was so close to turning back when a cannon of steam exploded into Bruce's side, blasting him through another building. He looked up just in time to see a Titan with a red, armored head stomping towards Quinn. The red-headed Titan ran right over to Quinn and grabbed her by the neck, aiming a steaming barrel on its wrist towards her nape. Bruce quickly leapt at it and tackled it off her before it could strike. It was trying to kill her. But why? The Red Titan hammered a fist into Bruce and dodged every blow thrown back its way. They seemed to have very similar skill sets, but beyond that, Bruce noticed that this Titan had a red marking carved into its chest, very similarly to the yellow one Bruce had on his Titan form. If he could, Bruce wanted to question whoever controlled this Titan as well, but first, he'd have to keep it from killing Quinn. In the commotion of the brawl, Quinn managed to scramble herself free and she started to retreat. Both Bruce and the Red Titan ran after her, still scrapping with each other as they went. Gordon and the squad tried to slow down the Red Titan, but it was well able to fend them off. Plus, while it was clearly trying to kill another Titan, it also didn't seem to show any remorse for striking military police from the air and killing them as well. The Red Titan fired explosions of steam from its forearms that battered both Bruce and the female Titan, tearing holes into their flesh. All the while, Quinn kept laughing at her two foes, enraging them both more and more. They got her close to defeat it again, but then Bruce struggled to bat away the blasts of the Red Titan, giving the female Titan more opportunities to try fleeing again. Soon enough, she made it to the wall, leaned her hammer up against it, then climbed up the pole of the hammer. Her hands reached the top of the wall, and Bruce was just able to scramble up after her and grab her by the legs. She thrashed to get free, steam billowing around both of them as both of their Titan forms wore thin. He took one final yank, pulling her hands free, and they both fell from the wall. But as they crashed towards the ground, the Red Titan leapt through the air, punched right into Quinn's neck, and let loose an explosion of steam. Bruce smashed to the ground as Quinn's Titan exploded in a mist of red. Quinn had surely been obliterated. Questioning her was no longer an option. The Red Titan was now their only opportunity to get answers. Bruce summoned all his remaining strength to help pin down the Red Titan. It was not an easy battle, but with the help of those that remained in Gordon's squad, they were finally able to bring it down. The Titan eventually had to return to its human form, with a cloud of steam encapsulating it. Bruce too could no longer hold his Titan form and returned to normal. With the rest of the squad, they all stood around where the Red Titan had been, allowing the steam to clear. A figure soon appeared through the haze, and Bruce stomped towards it, already demanding answers to his questions. "Who are you, and why did you kill Private Quinn? We needed answers from her." But his pace slowed, as the figure soon came into full view. Bruce's mind tried to rationalize what he was seeing, but it made no sense to him. "When you have a chance to kill a Titan, you can't hesitate. How can you of all people not know that, Bruce?" Speaking to him through the clearing fog was Jason. Now this is the kind of episode that's a little bit hit or miss on this channel in terms of whether or not it gets a sequel. You know, an episode like My Hero Academia Maximum Venom got 2 sequels because people seem to really want it. An episode like Naruto in Space didn't end up getting a sequel because not that many people seem to want it. Though if that video did end up jumping up in views, I would consider doing a follow-up or another anime set in that same sci-fi universe. But anyway, point is to say, Attack on Titan will get a sequel if this video gets, say, 80,000 views in its first week. Kind of an arbitrary number, but whatever, let's just go with it. It's definitely doable for this channel. And of course, give me more suggestions for what else you'd like to see me do with Attack on Titan characters, or other animes, or Batman characters, or anything like that. Always open to suggestions. Plus, if you're new to the channel and you want more anime stuff, maybe check out my famous anime characters as Dragons video. I also just wanted to give a massive thank you to Burnt Chicken Nugget 24 and all the incredible artists that participated in making me this big beautiful mural for my birthday this year. It was last week, I wasn't gonna mention it, but since a bunch of people went to the effort of making this, I wanted to make sure to show it and say why they made it. It was a super cool surprise, so thank you all so much. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or uplifting note. And today I want to leave people with the thought that forgiveness is one of the best things you can do for yourself. If someone else has done something awful to you, forgiving them is not excusing what they did, but what it is doing is it's releasing any anger or resentment you have towards that person or situation that might be controlling you and overwhelming your mind. Forgiving other people and even forgiving yourself is just going to make your life more peaceful. I hope that's helpful to someone out there. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.